This is 432 Park Avenue. Rising to more than 426 meters, it is currently the tallest residential building in the Western Hemisphere. And then there's this, and this, and this. A total of 12 skyscraper residential buildings are in various stages of development, most in one stretch of one street, 57th Street in Midtown Manhattan. With each new high-rise residential unit comes a high price tag, $30 to $40 million for a luxury apartment that may never be lived in is becoming commonplace. According to a report in the New York Times, shell companies, or inactive companies used for financial maneuvers, own many of these units. No problem, says lawyer Edward Mermelstein, who represents several foreign investors in the United States. He calls New York City a bargain and says his clients pay cash and want in.
We have a very strong international buyer pool, but they're seeing New York as a value play. They still see the fact that New York, in comparison to other cities, is less expensive, and there's a lot of room for growth.
Architectural critic and educator Paul Goldberger agrees, but he sees a downside to absentee ownership for New York City.
It almost goes without saying that they don't pay income taxes because their residence, official primary residence, is not here. But they're not paying property taxes either in most cases. And there have been some loopholes in our zoning legislation that have allowed these very, very tall buildings to go up, particularly on 57th Street, without much public review.
That hot zoning issue was topic one at a recent meeting of the local community board. The board wants changes in city zoning laws and called this skyscraper picket fence development a problem for the general public. Community board member Leila Lodjasico.
These buildings are going to cast enormous shadows on Central Park. And the issue that we have here is that we're not talking about one building. We're talking about at least 12 buildings that we know of that are in the plannings for this really narrow stretch of Manhattan. That means that during the daytime, it will be colder in winter to a point that people will no longer be able to use the park.
Developers are not talking, they're building. And on the drawing board is a proposed Western Hemisphere record breaker, 433 meters high, also on 57th Street, in what is now being called Billionaires Row. Bernard Shusman, VOA News, New York.